Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. We are going to try and do the January book haul. I say try because I've already done this a few times and I just have been struggling so hard to get my thoughts out because I read very excellent books. I ended up reading 4 books. I read two nonfiction and 2 fiction, and then I read this beautiful manga that I will be recommending to everybody. But it's just the thing is that like they're all excellent books, but I still have not been able to properly form correct thoughts on all the books. It's kind of like sometimes when you read a really bad book, it's easy to throw out a lot of thoughts. And then sometimes when there's a book that's just like totally life-changing, that also is very easy to talk about. But then there are books that are just, they're very good. And you're just kind of stuck there. It's hard to explain. So let's try today. The very first book that I read, or rather that I finished in the month of January, is called Une Page d'Amour by Emile Zola. This is the 10th book in the Rougon-Macquart cycle when you're reading it in the recommended chronological order, which is what I have been doing. So I am now halfway through the series and I am just enjoying it as much as I have from the very big moment. There's like, there have been a few books where I'm like, this isn't as good, but this book isn't as good type of sentiment. It's always been like comparing that book to other Zola books, not comparing the book to other books, but just to Zola himself. And then also some of them are subjective. It's how the book resonates within me and my personal experiences, and that might change my rating of a book. But every book has been technically, objectively, every book is superb and really excellent. So this is Une Page d'Amour, and this one we go back to some characters that we have met before, but we go back to their daughter Hélène. And Hélène has just moved to Paris after the widowing, after the death of her husband. She has come with her young daughter Jeanne, and Jeanne suffers from epilepsy. She suffers from seizures. And the book opens on this one night when Jeanne is suffering this incredibly horrible seizure. Her mother Hélène panics. She leaves the house and starts knocking on people's doors looking for a doctor, and there she stumbles onto the Dr. Deberle. Dr. Deberle is a young, handsome gentleman, and he's a very kind man, and he takes care of Jeanne very well. And it also turns out that he is her neighbor. So from there on, we follow Hélène, and she's kind of, due to the death of her husband and due to the having to take care of her young daughter and just being one of those like very well-mannered women who's very faithful, very loyal, she's kind of keeps within her apartment, and she kind of just wants to stay there. But the thing is that everybody around her and society as a whole is telling her that they need to get out. So you have her interactions with this Dr. Deberle, a man who has formed amorous intentions towards her. You have her 2 friends, an Abby and his brother. Then you have a poor woman, Madame Fétu, that Hélène very often comes to see and take care of. And then you have Jeanne herself, the young daughter, who is taken care of being taken care of by her mother. And so this book ends up being what's called Une Page d'Amour, which means literally means like Une Page d'Amour, like a page of love, but it's like, it's almost like a love story, but it's just a page. And this book, the title becomes this ironic look at what love is and how people can be taken advantage of due to this love. And so Hélène becomes this very tragic character as everybody around her is using her in a way that society tends to use people, as Zola very often shows in his books. And this book is very well, beautifully written, as always. Jeanne, the daughter, is an insufferable character, as unfortunately, if you don't like reading about bratty children, like I don't enjoy reading about bratty children, that part of the book kind of sucks, to be honest. It's really hard. You just kind of want to slap the girl and be like, just, you know? That part's difficult to read, but everything else is a very well done story, and it just leads to just a very tragic character in the character of Hélène. So this was a beautiful story, just oh, that little kid, I just wanted to kick in the face. I'm gonna be honest. I couldn't deal with that kid. But yeah, very happy to have read this. Look at those beautiful bright pink spread edges. So much fun. Love these old editions. What a wonderful start to the new year of 2026. Then I ended up reading a play because those of you who have been following me know those of you who have been following me know that I have been on a French plays journey. Even though I am French, I did grow up in the US, and so my French education was limited compared to, say, what my cousins who lived in France were experiencing. So I decided recently to catch up on their French education and give it to myself. And so I've been catching up and really enjoying all these French plays that I'd never read. And so this time I read Hernani by Victor Hugo, the very famous Victor Hugo of Les Miserables, and Notre-Dame de Paris, and then my favorites, L'homme qui rit, The Man Who Laughs, oh my gosh, or Le Dernier Jour d'un Homme Condamné, The Last Day of a Condemned Man. Oh, if you have not read that one, Victor Hugo's dark humor at its finest. So good. So Hernani is, however, about these three men who are going after the same woman, Doña Sol. However, she is only in love with one of the men, the Hernani, the titular character, Hernani. She's only in love with Hernani, but Hernani is a poor man and he is a bandit. And so the other two men who are after are the King Carlos, who will eventually become the emperor. This play itself takes place in, I think, 1519 in Spain. So King Carlos is one of her suitors, but he will become he has the fate of becoming emperor. And then she has one other suitor named Ruy Gomez, who is sort of like a count kind of man who's also going after her. And the whole thing is basically about Hernani and these two suitors, and they're battling each other for the love of this woman, Doña Sol, even though she's telling everybody, my love is only for Hernani, like my devotion is only to Hernani. If you try and take me away from Hernani, I will kill myself. But you know, she's just a silly, frivolous woman, and these men are still pining for her, but they are very much tied to the gentleman's code, the soldier's code, the code of honor and everything like that. And because of that, you get into these silly situations. But as a whole, it's an excellent, very fun drama, and I love a good French rhyming scheme. That's just like my Achilles heel. Give me a good rhyming scheme in French, and I will love it. So Hernani was a very, very fantastic, fun read. I really enjoyed all the characters, and I enjoyed all the debacles, and I enjoyed all the sort of like back and forth between all the characters, especially when they're like taunting each other. I really, really love that. Really, really fun. All right, the next two books are the ones that are the most difficult to talk about. It's the nonfiction books. I'm going to leave the one that hasn't been translated into English last, so that those of you guys who can't read French or Japanese, I mean, I'll still tell you what it's about. But let's do the one that is in English, and that is In the Time of Madness, Indonesia on the Edge of Chaos by Richard Lloyd Parry. This book is about Richard Lloyd Parry's own accounts of Indonesia between the period of like 1997 to 1999 in Indonesia, when Indonesia was going through this huge upheaval politically, in terms of government, in terms of defining the borders of Indonesia, etc. Richard Lloyd Parry is a journalist. He's now currently in Japan. He's been in Japan for quite a long time. And he's actually done a few back and forth stints in Japan. But at this time, he was focused on Indonesia. And the book is split into three parts. You have, let me find the table of contents. The first part is Borneo between 1997 and 1999. The second part is about Java, the island of Java, 1998. And the third part is about East Timor, or the creation of East Timor, within 1998 and 1999. And again, this is his own personal experiences of the country during these time periods as a journalist at the time. So we have to take that into account. He's not a historian. He is not trying to properly provide all of the history, all the inner and outs that's going on. He's not giving biographies about all the politicians at the time. He's just describing his personal experiences. So I wouldn't take this as the account of Indonesia if you're interested in the country. It's just a good account, but I wouldn't take it as the only account that you should read about Indonesia. So it starts off in Borneo, and the thing about what was happening in Borneo at the time is that you had so Borneo was, and still is, kind of made up of a lot of tribes, and a lot of the tribes were quite violent at the time. And this particular time had the Dayak tribe, who is known as being historically quite violent. They're rumored to have been cannibalistic. They were headhunters. Basically, they whenever they fought an enemy, it was part of their culture to decapitate the enemy and take the head as a trophy. And the rumors about the cannibalistic part was that it was rumored that they would eat the heart of their enemy, or maybe a piece of brain of the enemy, or they would just eat parts of the brain of the enemy as a trophy. Now that part, historians debate on it, but it is a rumor about this Dayak tribe. And the thing is that at the time there was like a quite large Islamic population, and they were just butting heads, and it became this incredibly violent scene where they were fighting against each other. Mostly the Dayak tribe was on the defensive, at least in terms of how Richard Lloyd Parry describes it, although he kind of seems to take the side of the Islamists. And then you can't forget there's actually a third group on the island, which are the Christians, who are kind of like taking punches from both the Dayaks and the Islamist side. And it's just become this huge mess. There were a lot of people killed. It was an incredibly violent time to be in Borneo. And basically, Richard Lloyd Parry just describes himself trying to interview people on both sides, or all three sides, or any side possible, to kind of see like what was the trigger for this violence. What are the cultural differences that they can't surpass? Like, who's the leader? Who are the leaders? Are there leaders? And there's just such chaos, and this is like he can't really pin anything down. But in the meantime, he witnesses all this chaos and all this violence. He describes many decapitated heads, either posted on oil barrels that kids were playing with, or young men were carrying, just walking down the street. And then he describes, but only describes, he never witnesses, but he always describes talking to people who were talking about rumors of such and such and so, and who were eating parts of their enemies. That part, again, is all rumor, but Richard Lloyd Parry does report on it. Okay. The second part is about Java in 1998. The issue with Java in 1990 in that period is that there were huge student protests asking for the president to step down. The government at that time, the president especially, was incredibly corrupt. Reminds you of certain people. They were posting all their like sons and daughters and family members in like very high government positions, and obviously all those people took advantage of their positions to take all the money they could. They destroyed the economy. They destroyed crops. They destroyed the livelihood of the regular Indonesian people, and they just took all of the wealth. And because of that, you have all the riots who are asking the president to step down. And because of that, it created a lot of violence between the Indonesian government and the students. So Richard Lloyd Parry was in Indonesia at that time, and he reports on that. And the final part about East Timor is about when the president stepped down, he made what is considered a very surprising announcement, of which he granted the opportunity to East Timor for them to gain independence. He said, you can choose to be with us, to be a part of Indonesia, or you can declare independence and become your own country. And that created a lot of violence between the people who were anti-independence and the people who were pro-independence. And a lot of Richard Lloyd Parry goes there, but he describes this mass confusion because it was like the Indonesian police were supposed to protect the people of East Timor, but it seemed like they were themselves killing the people of East Timor. And there was whoever he talked to was for the independence, and yet the people who were against independence were incredibly violent. And he was just like wondering, like, where is this violence coming from? And again, who are the leaders? Who's organizing this? And he just could never ever like find anybody. It was just this chaos, and so there were rumors that the president was sending his own army to go against the East Timorians, and it became this huge mess of just, again, chaos, violence, fear. Richard Lloyd Parry suspects that a lot of the people who claim to be pro-independence were actually he says that a lot of people who claim to be pro-independence were probably actually anti-independence. I said it wrong again. He claimed that a lot of people who claimed to be anti-independence were probably pro-independence. However, they were being threatened, and people saying, you know, we'll kill your family, we'll kill your loved ones if you don't vote to not become independent. So huge chaos, huge disaster within this time period. And Richard Lloyd Parry, again, he's there to describe it all. Now, this, again, as I mentioned, this is a very personal account. It's about his experiences and whatnot. He doesn't try to really go and sort of use history, use biographies, or talk to historians to back up anything that he says. So you're kind of just going with what he says. And he definitely, in this particular part of his life and in the book itself, he's not too receptive to criticism. When he was in Borneo, for example, there was a female academic who asked to meet with him because she was very upset about the fact that he was reporting on the rumors of, you know, the cannibalistic tendencies of the Davaks. And when she was saying, like, that doesn't exist, no, like, cannibalism is a creation of white colonials who were trying to use that as an excuse for violence to massacre and destroy the native populations of all the countries they were trying to conquer. And because of that, she was very upset that he was reporting on the so-and-so cannibalistic tendencies of this tribe, even though, you know, supposedly they didn't exist. And even him, again, he's reporting rumors. He never actually witnessed anybody eating any parts of the enemies. So he's not really open for criticism on that. Like, again, when he was supposed to meet that historian, he decides to skip the meeting and fly back to Borneo. So we never get to hear what she was going to say about him, right? But it is incredibly well written. Like, Richard Lloyd Parry is a very good writer, and I do think he is a very good journalist, and I think he does have very good ethics and morals. I have read 2 of his other books. In fact, for some reason, he even followed me on Twitter at one point before I deleted that account, and I'm like, I don't know why you're here. I don't know why you're here. But I do respect the man, and I do think he writes very, very well. And I do think he has high moral and ethics. If he can interview a dog to get information, he will interview a dog. He is very good about that. And his criticisms I have had about his other books have been that he inserts himself too much in his books. His book goes to the tsunami, where he reports on this school where basically the entire student class was lost to the tsunami in 2011 in the Japanese Fukushima disaster. He describes that, but then at the end of the book, he like adds a chapter about himself and his belief in the supernatural and like ghosts and spirits and things like that. And I'm like, that's just not necessary. But this, because it is a personal account of him as a journalist at this time period, that was not an issue for me this time. It made sense. It's like, okay, you're talking about yourself because these are your experiences. You're talking about what you witnessed. So I didn't have that criticism that I typically have of his books. The last thing I want to leave off with in describing this book is I giggle every single time. So there's this quotation from the Times on the back of this book. And it reads, one of the most incisive portraits of moral failure by the so-called international community, which the author has had occasion to read. It beats the more epic accounts of heroic journalists such as John Simpson, hands down. And I'm just like, I don't know what John Simpson did, but wow. This Times reporter does not like John Simpson, and his heroic journalism. Oh, that cracks me up. I thought that was hilarious. So recommended, but don't take this as your only source of information of Indonesia, is what I would say. So there we go. Okay, the next book that I read, or the last novel, before I get into the manga that I read, that don't skip the manga part because it's a recommendation for everybody, just so you know. But the last book that I read is this collection of letters and diary entries. It's a book called Ces Voix nous viennent de la mer, these voices that come from the sea. Le Japon et ses morts, the Japanese and their dead. So it's a collection of letters and diary entries, or I should say the final letters and the final diary entries of young soldiers during the war. Now, this is a collection that the Jean Lartigue encountered when he was in Japan just shortly after the war ended, and he had heard about this collection of letters and diary entries that these University of Tokyo students had collected into one volume, and he took that and he had it translated into French. The original Japanese version is separated into 3 parts, but the French version decides to separate them even further and creates 5 parts, one of them being the war in China, the second being Pearl Harbor, the third are the battles within the Pacific, the fourth are the kamikazes, and the fifth is Hiroshima and the defeat of the Japanese. So he separates into 5 parts. And then to give a little bit of historical background for the French readers, every single part starts with a very like a few page synopsis of what was going on, what was happening during the war at the time, and what was to come. And so yeah, it's just a group of letters that are really beautiful and devastating and sweet and sad and nostalgic and memorable. It's these young boys. Every single letter before it, they give the name of the soldier, like Tokuro Nakamura. They say where he studied or what he was doing at the time, right before he joined the army or was forced to join the army, and then it always gives their date of death and place of death. Some of them died 4 years after the war. Some died only like 4 months after joining the war effort. So it's very tragic to see all those dates. But you have Tatsutagawa, you have Yoshiozaki, you just have all these young boys who weren't important historically enough to have dedicated biographies based on them, but they all have voices, and these particular voices are definitely from young students who were afraid of dying, afraid of the war. They were very much literary people. As I said, these were letters collected by students at the University of Tokyo. So most of these people were students at the University of Tokyo, some Kyoto University, but for the majority, these were students who were studying at the University of Tokyo at the time. Most of them in the literature department or cultural studies, or maybe like political science studies, etc., etc. So it's just these young men who were dedicated to their studies, who were forced to join the war and who were forced to die in the name of Japan. And these letters are just them apologizing to their mothers and fathers, to their sisters and brothers, to their professors, saying, I'm so sorry that you had to waste so much effort on me just for me to die. I'm so sorry I have to die before you. And it's just these really heartbreaking letters that kind of bring back the humanity to Japanese soldiers, because Japanese soldiers, for the most part, were known as being incredibly horrible during the war. They were terrible. I mean, look at the Death March, the Bhutan Death March, look at what they did in the Philippines, look at the Nanking Massacre, look at what they did in South Korea. This doesn't deal with South Korea. but look what they did in South Korea with the comfort women. Like, Japanese soldiers were horrible. They were horrific. They were just like the antithesis of what humanity is supposed to be. So this brings back just a smidge of humanity back to those young men who were against what they were seeing, who were against what they were being forced to participate in. And so it was a very, very touching read. So as I said, this book is only available in a French translation. As far as I haven't looked up if it's available in any other language, but it's definitely not available in English translation. And even in the French translation, this particular book is from 1954. The one I'm carrying, this edition. It was reprinted once, I think it was like once in the 1960s, but it has not ever been reprinted since. So you can only buy this book at antiquarian bookstores or books or things like that. You'll only be able to find it either if you try to look for it online or via serendipity, like I found it when I went to a famous book market in Paris that happens every weekend. In one of the arrondissements that I wasn't familiar with, but it was fun to visit. So yeah, gonna be hard to get your hands on this book, but it's definitely worth reading if you are into this time period. All right, so let me discuss the total opposite in feeling from what I just reviewed. This is the manga by the beautiful artist Panpanya. Panpanya is amazing and genius and just wonderful. This particular volume that I read is Moke no Machi. Moke no Machi means model town. And Panpanya is just one of those artists that just hands down one of the most sweetest experiences you can read. So basically Panpanya they're like all these like individual volumes, and you can kind of compare them to like a collection of short stories. So basically you have this reoccurring character who is this young girl right here, and she is just a young girl discovering the world around her. Okay, she's just a young girl discovering the world around her, and these books are basically just like little short stories in manga form, with her either experiencing something she's never experienced with her, or she has an idea that pops into her head and she wants to explore that, or she has a question and she goes on a quest to look for the answer, right? And it's just her trying to answer these questions or go through the experiences that a child is very likely to ask or to go through, and she's doing it in a very adult world. And this book is all about exploring the nostalgia and the whimsy and the fantasy of being a child, and then just like comparing that to the adult world. And the art is the most exquisite, beautiful thing you will ever witness. So the thing is that like all of the arts, you'll see these beautiful sceneries of like the buildings and like the areas that she explores. And basically what you see on the covers of these books is what you're going to experience inside. The art is exquisite all along. It's just absolutely famous and just beautiful. So the thing is that the scenery that she experiences, everything is drawn in these precise, beautiful details, exactly like you would see if you were exploring the streets of Tokyo yourself. But she is drawn in this very light pencil kind of form, just very, very few strokes, very light in pencil form. And it just shows the like the line between the adult world and a children's world. And so she just experienced the thing, and it's really beautiful because like even when she encounters adults in her books, because they're adults, they all have like these amphibious, amorphous heads and figures, and it just creates these tales that are just superb. Like for example, like here's an adult she's talking to in this scene, so you can see it's just like this weird shaped head that's neither an animal or human, but it's just crazy. And then even she can talk to animals, but it's fun because like in this one, at one point she's talking to a rat, and at first it's just a regular rat, but then when she tries to talk to it, or it decides to answer one of her questions, he turns into this like very penciled version of a rat as well, and it's just incredibly beautiful. And it's just so fun. Like it's really just crazy. One particular short story in this book is that the lights, there's a blackout going on, and her parents tell her to just go to bed and stay there. And she gets into her head that, well, they didn't tell me to go to sleep, they just told me to go to bed. So if I stay in my bed, then I'm safe, right? So she engineers her bed so that it can move. She goes out the window while still in bed, and she goes off and she wants to explore where the origin of the blackout is. And she runs into the person at the convenience because she needs to buy batteries, and then that's when she runs into the rat. And it's just so whimsical and beautiful, and it's just like, it's just nostalgia at its best. You'll remember your own childhood like no other. There's another short story in the particular volume that I just read, where her and her friend one day are climbing, are looking up the hill, and they notice that an escalator has been installed, and they're like, well, that's pretty convenient. That's not really a bad idea. And then her friend says, oh yeah, someone found a magic lamp and said they really wish there was an escalator on this very steep hill, and there it goes. There it is. And the two little girls are like, oh well, yeah, like that's actually a pretty good idea. And then our protagonist goes, except eventually it's gonna rain, and then like when it's fall and all the leaves fall, then the leaves will get caught in the escalator, and then the wind will make things better, and then like trash might like get thrown about and get stuck in the gears, and then how are you going to maintain something? And then she's like, they should have just also wished for an escalator with like a covering on top to protect it. And she says that as a joke, but the two girls like as they're walking away, they see this what looks like to be a magic lamp on the ground. And they kind of look at each other, and they look at the magic lamp. And then the very next day, they show up to where the escalator was, and now there's a covering, a weather protective covering over the escalator. And it just shows them looking for the magic lamp again, because if like, I can't believe I wasted a wish on a covering on an escalator on a really steep hill. And that's just like the charm and the beauty and the whimsy of these volumes. So I just had to mention this because I think everyone should read these. There are a few volumes translated into English, not this particular one. I think the second Goldfish, which is this one, I believe this one has been translated, but I'm not too sure. I know there's one that's like Tales of a Crab has definitely been translated, so just definitely look for that. What you're gonna look for is you're gonna look for the artist Panpanya. If you look up Panpanya, that's where you'll be able to find these books translated into your language. So there are a few volumes in English. France has translated the majority of these, of course, because they're on the, they've got their, what is it? They're on the game, they're on the roll, they're on the ball. So France has translated the majority of these. I know these have also been translated into Italian. I know they've been translated into Korean. So definitely just look up Panpanya. Even if you think like, because here's the thing, like I often get asked like, I want to read manga, I've never read manga, like what do you suggest? And the thing is like, manga is not a genre. Manga is a medium, right? Manga is a different way of expressing a short story, of telling a story, whether it's a short story or not. And so you have a lot of genres within the manga medium, right? You can have sports manga, you can have battle manga, you can have everyday slice of life manga, you have romance manga, you have gay manga, you have like fantasy, like you have everything you could want in manga, you can have. I mean, I read a manga that was about how to mourn your mother's death, right? So there's very serious stuff. So there's definitely something out there for everyone. And I think Panpanya is a really great way for the person who's interested in the idea of the concept of manga but just doesn't know where to start. I think this is a really great way to do that, because these books are just superb. They're beautiful, and they're heartwarming, and they're great for when there's a lot of trouble going on and you just need something to calm you down. And that was why I particularly read this book at the time I did, because I just, with everything going on politically, I needed something to calm me down. So yeah. I should mention sort of like currently reading. So January, I should mention I did start Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, but I'm going to tell you that I stopped reading this at around page 34 because of everything going on politically. Reading a sort of dystopic book, just, it's like we're already living kind of very dystopic moment right now. I didn't think this was, I just didn't have the mindset to be able to read this. So this was very much a right book, just at the wrong time. So I will come back and reread from the beginning at a different time later on when I feel my brain is more ready for this. So I did stop reading that. However, right now I'm filming. When I first attempted filming this, I only had 2 sessions left of Resurrection from Leo, not 2 sessions left, 2 3 reading sessions left before I finished Leo Tolstoy's Resurrection. But now at filming, I have finished this book, but this was finished in February, so I will talk about this in February. But at the time of me originally filming this, I was currently reading this book. So look forward to that in the month of February. So there you go. I think this is my best version of this video. So I'm happy I'll send it out. And anyway, thank you so much for not reading, but well, thank you for reading. Thank you for reading and participating in the world of books. It is very important at this time that people read. Literacy is important, whether it's to escape, whether it's to become more knowledgeable, whether it's to become more empathetic. It's necessary. So yes, thank you for everyone for reading, and also thank you for everyone for watching this video. I will see you in my next one. Bye.